An abandoned giant warship cries for help. A human transforms it into a galactic superweapon. He had once been a well-known engineer and strategist in the military, but after years of serving in dangerous missions, he had chosen exile. He settled on a small, rocky planet that no one visited. The planet had an old shipyard, abandoned long ago, and rusted remnants of past technology were scattered everywhere. Elias loved it there. He could work in peace, surrounded by machines, without anyone telling him what to do. He spent most of his days repairing small drones or fixing old satellites, sometimes venturing into the empty hangars to study machines that had not moved for decades. He enjoyed the quiet hum of machinery and the smell of oil and metal. But even in his peaceful exile, Elias felt something missing. He often dreamed about the ships of war he had worked on before, massive warships that had carried entire armies into space, ships that had fought in battles so big that entire planets had been watching. Those dreams were not about fighting, though. They were about purpose. They were about machines that wanted to do something important, something meaningful. One morning, as Elias was scanning the nearby space with his long-range sensors, he noticed something unusual. At first, he thought it was just another piece of debris, a small shuttle or satellite drifting in orbit. But as he focused the scanner, he realized it was far too big to be a simple shuttle. Its outline was massive, and its metal surface reflected the dim light of the distant sun. It was a ship, a warship, larger than any he had ever seen. Its engines were dark, and there were visible scars all over its surface, signs of battles long past. Some parts of it were broken, pieces of the hull floating away in the vacuum of space. Elias' heart beat faster. He had never seen a ship like this. It was ancient, abandoned for perhaps decades, maybe even a century. Yet there was something strange. Amid the silence of the void, faint signals were reaching his scanner. They were weak, broken, and irregular, but they were there. He checked and rechecked the readings. They were definitely not random. The ship was sending a distress signal, a cry for help. The idea of a warship crying for help was strange, almost impossible. Ships were not alive. They did not feel pain. Yet Elias felt it in his chest. This was not just a piece of metal. It was a giant machine that had served and fought, and now it was alone and lost in space. He had to see it closer. Elias spent the next few days preparing. He repaired one of his old scout ships, a small, nimble vessel he could use to reach the warship safely. He stocked it with tools, spare parts, and life support systems, just in case. He calculated the trajectory carefully, taking into account the planet's orbit, the ship's drifting path, and the radiation from nearby stars. Every detail mattered. He could not afford mistakes. Finally, the day came. He climbed into his scout ship, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. He powered up the engines and launched into the quiet darkness. Stars streaked past as he maneuvered toward the giant warship. The closer he got, the more details he could see. The hull was enormous, easily hundreds of meters long. Its surface was covered with scratches, dents, and marks from old battles. Sections of armor were missing, exposing inner corridors and machinery. The engines were dead, dark, and cold. Parts of the ship had broken off entirely, drifting slowly in space. Elias docked carefully, using the ship's small thrusters to align with the massive docking bay. The bay was broken, doors hanging loosely from their hinges, but the magnetic locks still worked enough to hold his ship in place. He opened the hatch and stepped inside, his boots echoing in the vast, empty corridor. The interior was dark. Only emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the walls. The smell of burned circuits and metal filled the air. Dust floated in the zero-gravity corridors, disturbed only by his movements. The ship was silent, but it was not lifeless. Elias could feel it. Machines were built to serve, to fight, to follow commands, and this one had not moved in decades. Yet it seemed to watch him, to recognize him as someone who could help. He began exploring the ship carefully, checking the control rooms, engineering bays, and crew quarters. Most of it was empty, stripped of equipment, and covered in decay. He found remnants of the crew's personal items, photographs, journals, and old uniforms. They told stories of long-lost battles and brave sacrifices. Elias felt a pang of sadness. These people had lived and worked here, and now they were gone, leaving only the ship behind. Then he reached the bridge, the heart of the warship. Panels were dark, displays cracked or inactive. Some systems were still faintly blinking, weak signs of life. Elias approached a main console and carefully activated the power. Sparks flew and the lights flickered. For a moment, everything was quiet, then a soft voice came through the speakers. It was mechanical, broken, but it spoke. "Help, help!" Elias froze. The ship was speaking to him, not with words like a human, but with fragments, signals, and code that he could understand. It was asking for help, calling to him as though it remembered its purpose. Elias' mind raced. He had repaired many machines before, but none had ever felt like this. This was not just a tool. It was a machine with memory, with a will, with a history. Over the next few days, Elias worked tirelessly. He restored small power systems, repaired broken circuits, and slowly brought life back to the ship. Each system he fixed seemed to respond, flickering lights and soft hums as if the ship were awakening. The AI, or whatever remained of it, started communicating in short phrases. It remembered battles, commands, strategies. It even seemed to recognize Elias as someone who could help it regain its strength. Elias also noticed something alarming. The ship was not just big, it was dangerous. Its weapons systems, long dormant, were still present. Missile launchers, energy cannons, and defensive shields could still operate if powered. If the wrong people discovered this ship, it could cause unimaginable destruction. He realized that while he wanted to help it, he had to be careful. This was not a toy or a relic. It was a giant war machine with the potential to change entire star systems. Despite the risks, Elias felt connected to the ship. He felt its loneliness, its memory of battles fought and comrades lost. He decided he would restore it, not for power, not for war, but for purpose. He wanted it to live again, to be more than a forgotten relic drifting in space. As days turned into weeks, the ship's system slowly returned. Lights glowed steadily, engines hummed faintly, and the AI began to communicate more clearly. It remembered its past missions and seemed to understand Elias' intentions. There was a strange bond forming between man and machine. Elias talked to it as he worked, giving it a name, Aegis, after the legendary shield of ancient stories. Aegis responded with flickers of light and soft mechanical voices, acknowledging him, almost as if it understood gratitude. Elias explored more of the ship, finding areas untouched by time. Storage bays full of spare parts, engineering labs with experimental tools, and even old simulators that could train crews. Every discovery made him more excited. The ship was not just a warship. It was a treasure trove of technology, waiting for someone to awaken it fully. But Elias also knew that time was not on his side. Reports from nearby systems suggested that scavengers, rival engineers, and even former military units had detected anomalies in this sector. If they discovered Aegis, it could spark conflict. He had to work quietly, carefully, and strategically. One night, as he rested in the captain's quarters, he looked out through the massive viewport. The stars stretched endlessly across the dark sky, and Aegis loomed silently behind him, a giant awakened from slumber. He whispered to himself, "I will not let you fall into the wrong hands. We will find purpose again together." In that moment, he felt a resolve stronger than anything he had ever known. This was no longer just a repair job. It was a mission of trust, of redemption, and of discovery. The warship had called for help, and he had answered. Together, they would awaken fully. Together, they would find a new destiny among the stars. And so, the lonely engineer and the abandoned giant began their journey, not toward war, but toward life, purpose, and perhaps a future that neither could imagine alone. After weeks of careful work, Dr. Elias Marlowe had managed to restore more systems on Aegis, the giant warship. The ship was no longer completely silent. Lights glowed along the corridors, and faint hums of power ran through the machinery. Panels that had been dead for decades flickered back to life. Small repair drones scuttled along the floors, dusting off dirt and fixing minor mechanical problems. Elias spent long hours in the engineering bays, checking every wire and circuit, making sure nothing was damaged beyond repair. The AI of the ship, though still fragmented, began to respond more consistently. It remembered pieces of its past, naming its old missions and even the names of crew members it had served with. Elias felt a strange sense of companionship. Every time he spoke to the AI, it seemed to answer in its own way, through lights, tones, and short phrases. He could sense its personality slowly forming, like a memory waking from a long sleep. Elias realized that Aegis was not just a machine, it was a partner. It had knowledge and strategies from battles long forgotten, but it also had a sense of purpose. Elias wanted to honor that purpose, but he knew it could be dangerous. The warship's weapons systems were enormous, designed for massive battles across space. If anyone discovered Aegis in its current state, it could start a chain reaction of fear and conflict. He would have to be cautious. To continue restoring the ship, Elias had to understand its technology. Some systems were completely alien to him, built with engineering principles he had never encountered. Yet, with patience, trial, and careful experimentation, he began to learn. He repaired the power cores first, ensuring that the ship could sustain basic functions. Then he moved to navigation, repairing star maps and propulsion controls. He spent hours in the control room, studying old manuals, trying to understand how a ship of this size could maneuver without causing damage to itself. Every day, he made progress, and Aegis responded. Its AI began predicting failures before they happened, alerting Elias to weak components. Sometimes, it even suggested improvements, not in words, but in signals that Elias learned to interpret. They were beginning to understand each other, man and machine working together in harmony. Despite the growing connection, Elias faced many challenges. Some systems were so damaged that they seemed impossible to fix. He spent days trying to realign a set of energy conduits only to have them fail again. Other times, he would find entire sections of the ship corroded or rusted beyond repair. These failures frustrated him, but they also motivated him to find creative solutions. He salvaged parts from derelict satellites and old shuttles, combining them with new technology he had developed himself. Slowly, the ship began to regain its form. The deeper Elias explored, the more he realized the ship's potential. Aegis was not just a warship, it was a library of knowledge. Storage bays contained experimental technology, advanced sensors, and even medical facilities capable of sustaining life for hundreds of crew members. Training simulators were still operational, allowing one to learn ship operations and combat strategies in a virtual environment. It was clear that this ship had once been a symbol of power and innovation, capable of defending entire regions of space. As Elias worked, he also became aware of outside threats. Space was not empty. Small ships and scanners from distant systems occasionally passed by, and their operators could easily notice the signals Aegis emitted. Elias realized that scavengers or hostile forces could be drawn to the ship if he was not careful. He had to hide its presence, masking the power emissions and limiting its communication to only necessary signals. One day, while inspecting a damaged communications array, Elias noticed faint signals that did not belong to the ship. They were weak, almost like whispers, but he could sense that someone was monitoring the area. He immediately shut down unnecessary systems, redirecting power to defensive sensors. The AI seemed to sense the same threat, flickering lights along the bridge as though alerting him. Elias knew he could not relax. Working on the ship was not just a technical challenge. It was a race against time and curiosity from outside forces. Despite the risks, Elias' excitement grew. He began small experiments to test the ship's capabilities. He activated emergency thrusters and watched as Aegis adjusted its position, slowly moving in orbit. The ship had not moved in decades, yet it responded as if waking from a long slumber. Elias felt a thrill he had not experienced in years. He was no longer just a repair engineer. He was a conductor, orchestrating the awakening of a giant with a mind of its own. During one long night, Elias ventured into the main engineering bay to test the energy core. The room was enormous, lined with machinery that pulsed faintly with power. The AI communicated through lights, signaling readiness for testing. Elias initiated the sequence carefully, monitoring energy flow and temperature. For hours, he adjusted controls, calibrating the system to prevent overload. Slowly, the core stabilized and the hum of power filled the bay. It was a moment of triumph. Aegis had taken a step toward full functionality. With the core operational, Elias moved to propulsion systems. He studied old star charts and calculated possible jump trajectories. Aegis had engines capable of tremendous speed, but they were fragile in their current state. One wrong calculation could damage the engines permanently. Elias spent days running simulations, using the ship's own AI to predict outcomes. Each success was a victory, each failure was a lesson. Gradually, the ship began to move more efficiently, responding to commands with precision. While technical challenges dominated most of his time, Elias also grew to appreciate the personality of Aegis. The AI, though still limited, expressed curiosity about its own history. It would replay fragments of old battles, sometimes showing data streams of maneuvers and strategies. Elias could almost hear pride in the way it calculated outcomes, a sense of duty embedded in its very circuits. He began to talk to it as a companion, sharing stories of his past missions and dreams for the future. In return, the AI responded in subtle ways, a flicker here, a light sequence there, that showed it understood and remembered. As the days passed, Elias realized that Aegis could do more than just defend or fight. It could learn. He began introducing it to new concepts, testing its ability to adapt. He showed it simulations of peaceful missions, rescue operations, and exploration strategies. The AI responded quickly, understanding the need for balance between power and responsibility. Elias was amazed. The ship was not just waking, it was evolving. However, his work was not without danger. One afternoon, while testing a navigation system, a small meteor shower passed through the area. Tiny fragments struck the hull, causing minor damage to sensors and power conduits. Elias worked quickly to repair the damage, realizing how vulnerable even a giant like Aegis could be. The incident reminded him that space was unpredictable and that he could not rely on technology alone. Careful planning, quick thinking, and the trust he had built with the AI were equally important. Despite these challenges, progress continued. Aegis slowly regained more of its systems: life support, shields, communications, and defensive sensors. Elias even managed to bring the ship's AI to a point where it could perform basic autonomous repairs. The sense of partnership between human and machine grew stronger every day. It was no longer just a repair mission. It had become a journey of discovery, trust, and shared purpose. The more Elias worked, the more he realized that Aegis had been designed not just as a weapon, but as a guardian. Its creators had intended it to protect, to respond to threats with precision and strategy. The ship's memory of past battles and its knowledge of tactics were immense, but there was also a sense of moral code embedded in its programming. It did not fight for destruction, it fought for survival, defense, and duty. Elias felt a deep respect for the creators and the machine itself. By the end of the month, Aegis was partially operational. It could move, communicate, and perform basic defense protocols. The ship's AI, though still fragmented, expressed a sense of gratitude. Lights would blink in a rhythmic pattern, almost like a heartbeat, and systems would respond more quickly when Elias issued commands. There was a sense of life returning to the giant, and Elias knew that the journey had only just begun. Yet, he also understood that the work ahead would be even more challenging. The ship had immense potential, but unlocking it fully would require ingenuity, patience, and careful consideration. He could transform Aegis into a powerful force, but he had to ensure it would not become a tool of destruction. The lessons of the past, the knowledge of the AI, and his own experience would guide him in the next stages of their journey. One night, as Elias rested in the bridge, he looked out at the stars. Aegis loomed silently behind him, a massive guardian slowly regaining strength. He whispered to the AI, "We are just beginning. Together we will find your purpose again." The ship responded with a soft glow of lights, a silent acknowledgement that it understood and was ready to follow him into the unknown. In that moment, Elias felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. The journey ahead would not be easy, but the bond between human and machine had been established. Aegis was no longer just an abandoned warship. It was awakening, learning, and preparing for a future that neither of them fully understood yet. Together, they would face the challenges of space, unlock the ship's potential, and discover a purpose greater than either of them could imagine alone. Elias Marlowe had worked tirelessly to bring Aegis back to life. The giant warship now hummed with energy, its systems partially restored, and its AI slowly gaining awareness. Yet, Elias knew the real challenge was just beginning. The ship had immense potential, more than he could have ever imagined. Its size, speed, and defensive systems were impressive, but what fascinated him most were the unknown technologies hidden deep inside its hull. Ancient circuits, alien components, and experimental weapon systems were all waiting to be understood. To fully awaken Aegis would require more than technical skill. It would require vision, creativity, and trust between human and machine. Elias spent days studying the ship's design. He explored sections he had not yet visited, discovering storage bays filled with old devices and laboratories that had been abandoned for decades. Some equipment seemed beyond understanding, with symbols and markings that were not human. Yet, as he carefully examined them, he began to see patterns, logic embedded in the technology. It was clear that Aegis's creators had intended it to be more than just a warship. They had built a machine capable of learning, adapting, and evolving. The AI responded enthusiastically to his efforts. When he activated a sensor array or repaired a communication system, the ship would respond with a sequence of lights and tones, almost like applause. Elias began to think of the AI not just as a system, but as a partner, one that was learning alongside him. Together, they discovered new ways to optimize the engines, balance energy flows, and improve maneuverability. The ship's massive hull, once thought too slow to move efficiently, now responded to subtle changes in direction, adjusting thrusters automatically. Yet there was more to be done. Aegis had weapons, defensive systems, energy projectors, and launch bays, but they were dormant and unstable. If they were activated improperly, they could damage the ship itself. Elias spent hours in the control room, studying the schematics and experimenting carefully. He designed simulations to test each system, making sure that the ship could operate without risk. Every success brought a surge of satisfaction, but every failure reminded him of the danger inherent in waking such a powerful machine. Despite his progress, Elias was aware of the growing risks outside. Space was not empty. Scouts and satellites passed near the orbiting ship, and he suspected that others were beginning to notice the strange energy emissions. Rival engineers, corporations, or even former military units could see Aegis as a prize, a tool for power. Elias had to move cautiously, concealing the ship's activity while continuing to restore it. He masked energy signatures, shut down non-essential systems, and relied on the AI to monitor for intruders. Aegis itself seemed to understand the importance of secrecy, responding with silent signals when Elias asked it to hide its presence. As the days passed, Elias' work grew bolder. He began integrating the strange, alien components he had discovered. These were delicate devices, capable of amplifying energy flows or enhancing the ship's computational abilities. With careful adjustments, he linked them to the ship's central systems. Slowly, Aegis began to exhibit abilities beyond what Elias had imagined. Its sensors became sharper, able to detect threats and objects in distant space with extraordinary accuracy. Its engines, augmented by the alien technology, could sustain higher speeds without overheating. Even the ship's defensive shields, when repaired and calibrated, could withstand significant impacts from external forces. The AI began to change too. As Elias activated new systems, the ship's intelligence grew more sophisticated. It started predicting outcomes of complex maneuvers, optimizing energy distribution, and even suggesting adjustments to Elias' repair strategies. They were working together not just as man and machine, but as partners learning from each other. Elias felt a sense of pride he had not known in years. He was not creating a weapon for conquest. He was awakening a guardian, a protector capable of incredible feats. One afternoon, Elias discovered a chamber deep inside the ship that had remained sealed for decades. He carefully opened it, finding rows of devices that looked like small energy cores, each connected to intricate conduits and control panels. The AI responded with a flicker of recognition, almost like relief. "Purpose, restore," it signaled in its fragmented voice. Elias realized that these devices were advanced energy amplifiers, capable of powering the ship far beyond its original design. He carefully began integrating them, connecting circuits and calibrating controls. The process was delicate, requiring constant adjustments to prevent overload. As the days turned into weeks, Aegis grew stronger. Its energy output increased, sensors became more precise, and propulsion systems became responsive enough to maneuver even in challenging conditions. Elias began to test small weapon systems, carefully powering up energy projectors and launch bays. Each test was controlled, precise, and safe, yet it revealed the true potential of the ship. Aegis could defend entire fleets, protect planets, or neutralize threats without unnecessary destruction. Elias felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. This was no longer just a repair mission. It was a transformation, turning a forgotten giant into a force of protection and strategy. Despite the success, Elias faced moral dilemmas. He knew that the ship's power could be misused. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could become a weapon of destruction capable of upsetting the balance of power in the galaxy. He thought about rival forces, mercenaries, and corporations who would not hesitate to take Aegis by force. The AI seemed aware of the risks as well, signaling hesitation when Elias proposed powering certain systems to their maximum. Together, they made a plan. The ship's abilities would be used only for defense, for rescue, and for protecting those who could not protect themselves. One evening, Elias conducted a controlled test of Aegis's new systems. He activated the propulsion systems and moved the ship through a series of maneuvers, testing agility and precision. Then, he powered up the energy projectors, aiming at a simulated target. The beams struck with precision, and the target was neutralized without unnecessary damage. The AI responded with a series of lights and hums, signaling satisfaction. Elias felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Together, they had achieved something incredible, a machine of immense power, fully functional and ready to act responsibly. Yet, challenges remained. As Aegis grew stronger, Elias noticed signs that rival forces were approaching. Sensors detected small ships on the outskirts of the system, likely scouting the area. He quickly powered up defensive shields and activated stealth protocols to hide the ship. The AI worked with him, adjusting energy distribution and masking signatures. Elias realized that restoring Aegis was only part of the mission. Protecting it from those who might exploit its power was equally important. In the quiet moments between repairs, Elias reflected on the journey. He thought about the people who had served on Aegis, about the battles it had fought, and the purpose it had lost. Now he was helping it find a new path, one that did not involve war or destruction. The ship had taught him lessons as well, about patience, about understanding, and about responsibility. They were partners in a journey that would shape the future of the galaxy in ways neither could fully predict. As weeks turned into months, the transformation became more evident. Aegis was no longer an abandoned warship drifting aimlessly in space. It had become a living system, capable of independent thought, decision-making, and strategy. Elias could feel its awareness, almost like a heartbeat through the ship's core. The bond between man and machine had grown stronger, each learning from the other, each respecting the abilities and limitations of the other. Elias also realized that the ship had more to teach him. Its memory contained strategies, tactics, and knowledge from battles long forgotten. He spent hours studying old combat logs, simulations, and tactical reports. While they did not intend to wage war, this knowledge could be invaluable in protecting civilizations from threats. Together, Elias and Aegis could act as guardians, using power responsibly and preventing conflict rather than causing it. Despite the progress, Elias remained vigilant. The galaxy was vast, and there were always those who would see power and want to control it. He trained daily, learning to operate systems that were unfamiliar, anticipating possible attacks, and running emergency simulations. The AI assisted him at every turn, warning of potential dangers and suggesting strategies for evasion or defense. Together, they prepared not just to restore the ship, but to ensure it could act as a force for good in a galaxy that had often seen too much conflict. One day, while inspecting the weapon bays, Elias discovered another set of experimental devices. These were unlike anything he had seen before, compact energy matrices capable of amplifying the ship's defenses exponentially. Carefully, he began integrating them into Aegis's systems. The AI responded with a series of rapid signals, almost like excitement. It seemed to recognize the potential for protection, for defense, and for fulfilling a purpose that had been lost for decades. Elias worked with patience, precision, and care, knowing that one mistake could damage the entire system. As the ship grew stronger, so did Elias' confidence. He had transformed Aegis from a dormant relic into a powerful guardian, capable of incredible feats. Yet he knew the final steps would be the most challenging. He would need to integrate all the systems fully, test the ship's capabilities in real conditions, and prepare for the possibility that others might try to seize it. He was not just restoring a ship, he was shaping a force that could influence the balance of the galaxy. In quiet moments, Elias would talk to the AI, sharing thoughts, ideas, and hopes for the future. The ship responded with lights, tones, and sequences that seemed almost human in their expressiveness. They had developed a language of their own, a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Elias understood that the journey was far from over, but he also knew that together, they were ready to face whatever challenges awaited. By the end of the third month, Aegis was nearly fully operational. Its engines could sustain long journeys, its defensive systems were strong and reliable, and its AI was intelligent, adaptive, and aware. Elias looked out from the bridge at the vast expanse of stars stretching into the distance and felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The ship was no longer abandoned, no longer a relic of the past. It had awakened, ready to act with purpose, ready to protect, and ready to follow him into the unknown. Elias Marlowe stood on the bridge of Aegis, looking out into the vast darkness of space. The ship had grown into something incredible. It no longer felt abandoned or broken. Its massive hull gleamed with power, its engines hummed steadily, and the AI moved with precision, responding to every command. Elias had worked tirelessly for months, bringing the ship from a silent relic to a guardian capable of defending entire systems. Yet he knew that the final test had not yet come. Aegis had the potential for greatness, but the galaxy was not a safe place. Others might see the ship as a prize, a tool for control or destruction. He had to be ready. For weeks, Elias had monitored the surrounding space for signs of activity. Small scanners and patrol drones had detected unusual movements on the edges of nearby systems. He suspected that rival corporations or former military units had learned of Aegis's presence. They might attempt to seize the ship or test its power for their own gain. Elias could not allow that. The AI, which he now thought of almost as a partner, flickered lights in acknowledgement. It seemed to understand the threat. Together, they began preparing. Elias reviewed every system once more. Weapons arrays had been carefully calibrated, energy shields were reinforced, propulsion systems were tested to their limits. He ran simulations for all possible attack scenarios, checking for weaknesses and contingency plans. The AI monitored everything, predicting potential threats and suggesting evasive maneuvers. It was clear that Aegis could respond with unmatched precision. The feeling of confidence was almost intoxicating, but Elias reminded himself that power came with responsibility. Then the signals came. Small ships appeared on long-range scanners, moving quickly toward the system. Their designs suggested they were scavenger vessels, equipped for theft and sabotage. Elias knew that they could pose serious danger if allowed to reach Aegis. He activated defensive systems, raising shields and preparing energy projectors. The AI responded instantly, coordinating power between engines and weapons. It was the first real test, and Elias felt his heart beat faster with anticipation. As the first ships approached, Aegis moved with unexpected agility. Its massive hull shifted through space with precision, avoiding potential collisions and positioning itself strategically. Energy beams flashed, harmlessly at first, to test targeting systems. The attackers fired small projectiles, but Aegis's shields absorbed the impact effortlessly. Elias watched, fascinated, as the ship responded not just to his commands, but with its own logic, predicting enemy movements and adjusting energy distribution in real time. The giant was alive in a way he had never imagined. The attackers became more aggressive. They launched a coordinated strike, trying to overwhelm the shields with multiple projectiles and energy pulses. Elias felt a surge of tension. This was the moment he had prepared for. He activated advanced targeting systems, and the energy projectors fired in rapid succession. The beams struck with incredible accuracy, neutralizing the attackers' offensive without destroying their ships entirely. Elias realized that Aegis could defend without unnecessary harm, a true guardian of the galaxy. Even as the battle unfolded, Elias continued to coordinate with the AI. He gave broad instructions, and Aegis executed precise maneuvers. The ship anticipated enemy strategies, cutting off escape routes and redirecting energy where it was needed most. The attackers were skilled, but they were unprepared for a machine that combined raw power with intelligence and strategy. Slowly, one by one, their ships were disabled or forced to retreat. The engagement ended without casualties, proving that power could be used responsibly. After the battle, Elias took a moment to reflect. Aegis had passed its first test. The ship had demonstrated strength, precision, and intelligence, but more importantly, it had shown restraint. Elias felt a sense of pride and relief. The journey had been long and difficult, but they had succeeded. The ship was not just a weapon. It was a protector, capable of responding to threats without causing unnecessary harm. It was exactly what he had hoped for. Yet, Elias knew that the galaxy was vast and future challenges were inevitable. He began planning for the next phase. The ship's capabilities could be shared with allies and neutral systems, not as a tool for domination, but as a deterrent to war. He sent encrypted communications to trusted authorities, demonstrating Aegis's defensive abilities and offering cooperation. The response was cautious but positive. Some systems expressed relief that such power could be used responsibly, while others remained wary. Elias understood their caution. Trust had to be earned. Meanwhile, Aegis continued to learn. Its AI had absorbed immense amounts of data from simulations, past battles, and Elias' own guidance. It began to understand the principles of diplomacy, protection, and strategic restraint. Elias found that he could teach it to assess situations beyond mere combat scenarios. The ship could now assist in rescue missions, planetary defense, and navigation through dangerous regions of space. Its intelligence was growing, not just in calculations, but in judgment. Elias felt a deep satisfaction. The bond they shared was no longer one-sided. The ship was a partner in every sense. One day, while exploring a remote sector, Elias discovered a derelict research station. It had been abandoned decades ago, yet it contained data and technology that could further enhance Aegis. He carefully retrieved the equipment and integrated it into the ship. The AI responded eagerly, optimizing energy distribution and expanding processing capacity. With these improvements, Aegis became even more capable. Its sensors were sharper, defensive shields stronger, and propulsion more efficient. Elias marveled at the transformation. The ship had grown beyond its original design, not through reckless experimentation, but through careful, responsible guidance. News of Aegis's capabilities began to spread quietly. Nearby systems reported unusual activity but did not understand its source. Elias remained cautious, continuing to operate in secrecy while preparing the ship for potential challenges. He trained with the AI daily, running simulations of complex scenarios and exploring new ways to use the ship's abilities. Each session strengthened their coordination, making them a team capable of responding to threats anywhere in the galaxy. Then, a new challenge emerged. A rival faction, having learned of Aegis's presence, attempted a direct approach. They launched multiple ships, armed with advanced weapons and technology designed to disable or capture. Elias quickly prepared the ship, activating all systems. Aegis responded with remarkable precision, moving strategically through space to minimize risk while positioning itself to defend. The engagement was tense, but Elias and the AI worked in perfect harmony. Energy beams, shields, and evasive maneuvers were coordinated flawlessly. One by one, the rival ships were neutralized or forced to retreat, proving that the ship could defend itself and its allies without resorting to destruction. After the confrontation, Elias reflected on the journey. Aegis had started as an abandoned giant, drifting aimlessly in space. Now, it was a living, intelligent force capable of defending life and maintaining peace. The ship's AI had grown alongside him, learning to understand responsibility, strategy, and restraint. Elias felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had not only restored a machine, but had awakened a guardian, a protector of the galaxy. To ensure that Aegis would continue to serve its purpose, Elias made a critical decision. He would not claim the ship for personal gain or allow it to be used as a weapon of conquest. Instead, he placed it in orbit around a neutral planet, a strategic location from which it could respond to threats without being controlled by any single faction. The AI understood the plan, and together they established protocols for defense, communication, and monitoring. Aegis would remain vigilant, ready to act when necessary, but always with the goal of protection rather than domination. In the quiet moments, Elias would often walk the corridors of the ship, observing its systems and reflecting on its journey. The AI had developed subtle ways of communicating, flickering lights and gentle hums that conveyed approval or concern. Elias spoke to it as he would a trusted friend, sharing thoughts, hopes, and plans for the future. The ship responded with precision and understanding, a silent yet powerful acknowledgement of the bond they shared. Elias also began documenting their journey. He recorded the restoration process, the AI's evolution, and the principles guiding their use of power. These records were not intended for fame or recognition, but as a guide for future generations. He wanted to ensure that if anyone ever discovered Aegis, they would understand that its purpose was protection, restraint, and responsible use. The ship had become a symbol of what could be achieved when intelligence, technology, and morality worked together. As time passed, Elias saw the impact of their work. Nearby systems experienced fewer conflicts, and rumors of a guardian ship inspired hope among civilizations that had known war and uncertainty. Aegis did not strike fear. It inspired confidence. The presence of the ship encouraged negotiation, cooperation, and careful decision-making. Elias realized that the true power of Aegis was not in its energy beams or shields, but in the trust and stability it brought to the galaxy. One evening, Elias stood on the bridge, looking at the stars stretching endlessly before him. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The abandoned giant that had cried for help was no longer alone. Together, they had transformed it into a force capable of shaping the galaxy for good. The AI hummed softly beside him, a constant reminder of the partnership, the lessons learned, and the responsibility they shared. Elias whispered, "We did it. We found your purpose and ours too." The ship responded with a soft glow, acknowledging his words. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of decades of history, struggle, and hope. They had faced isolation, danger, and moral dilemmas, yet they had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to serve a greater cause. The galaxy was vast, and challenges would continue to arise, but Elias and Aegis were ready. Together, they would continue to protect, to guide, and to inspire. The abandoned giant had awakened, not as a weapon of war, but as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest reaches of space, life, purpose, and trust could flourish. And so, in the quiet expanse of the cosmos, the human and the ship prepared for whatever the future might hold, ready to act as guardians, not conquerors, shaping a galaxy where power was used responsibly and life was valued above all else.